Created live on Fireside.
Welcome to Your Next Stop. This is Juliet Hahn. I am a wife, mom, virtual coach, public speaker, and crazy obsessed dog lover. I am so honored to be able to take you into the life of someone that has followed a passion. Every week, I hope you are as inspired as I am. Welcome to Your Next Stop. Hey everyone, how are you? So this is YNSLive, and my guest, as you guys have seen her all over Fireside lately, is Kelly Rizzo. Kelly, thank you so much for jumping on and saying hi to everyone.
Oh, thank you for having me, Juliet. This is so fun. I don't think I've been a guest on Fireside yet, so this is very exciting.
I know, isn't it the fun part of it? So I just actually saw a new feature in here too, that you can simulcast to like YouTube and Twitch and all these other things. And wow, that's an aggressive applause. I like that.
Yeah, it's so cool.
And I'm not doing that now because I had to sign into all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? We're going to figure that out. But that's so cool that that's a new feature. That's why I love Fireside so much, right? It gives us so many different opportunities to get our stories out, which I love. So Kelly,
exactly.
I have been like watching you. That sounds so creepy. But I have. So I am loving what you're doing. And I have been in a couple of your rooms on Fireside. And I just love your energy and just everything about you, your stories on Instagram. You're just like a fun person with like a really good heart. So, I just want to say thanks, for letting us into your world. So that's where I want to start. I would love for you to kind of tell us how you got started in all of this.
Oh gosh, it's kind of a fun, interesting story. First, thank you for A, having me, and B, saying those very, very kind words. That's very nice. Thank you. So gosh, it was about 10 almost years ago now that I was in a real estate career with my family for almost 20 years at the time. And I got very burnt out on it. I went through a divorce and I'm like, gosh, I just need to do something new. I kind of wanted to reinvent myself. And this was at the time when, people were kind of starting blogs, even though it wasn't really a thing yet, but there was definitely no social media really yet except Facebook. And I'm like, I'm going to start a blog. Like, what do I love? What can I speak to? What am I passionate about? And what can I maybe educate people on? I'm like, well, I love food, travel, and music. So I literally just went out and bought eattravelrock.com and I started blogging. And then I knew that I really wanted to do more on camera and more video content, but that wasn't really even a thing back then either, and I didn't have my own TV show at the time. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do? And I started doing a lot of band interviews, like big, famous rock bands, country bands, interviewing them like backstage at their shows, at their music venues. And so that was really fun. And then I got a local food show in Chicago, where I'm from. And then it just kind of started snowballing. And then I was like, wait, can this be a full-time career?
Right.
Like at first it was just a side, like a hobby. And then I'm like, wait, no, I really want to focus on making this my actual job. And then it started becoming a little bit more commonplace for, I hate the term influencer, but, whether it was influencer or blogger, things like that, where I started being able to actually turn it into a full-time job. And then I moved to LA about 4.5 years ago. And then ever since then, for sure, Eat Travel Rock has been an actual career and not just a hobby.
Right. And I love that. And, I think because this is what I talk about pretty much when I do my Your Next Stop, which is my podcast, which is pre-recorded. And then I have my live shows here. One of the things that is always kind of comes up and how people kind of found their niche is they were doing something before that they just didn't feel like it was for them, right? They didn't feel like their purpose in life was that. And so I love that you said that you kind of were like, I want to change things because there's so many people that don't, right? There's so many people that just stay in that spot where they wake up and they go through the motions. And to me, that's like the worst thing in the world. Like I can't imagine waking up and going through the motions. Now, do some days we all have that? Yes, right? I mean, that's normal. Right. But the fact that you kind of saw that, how old were you around then? Do you remember?
Gosh, about 32 or so, let's say 10 years ago. So, and a lot of times people think that by the time they're in their 30s, if they don't have it all figured out, that it's over, and, to almost start a new career. I mean, and it's not like it was related to real estate. I mean, this was completely a departure. So at, in my mid 30s then to really kind of start digging into it, makes me, now when I talk to people that are like in their 20s, they're like, I can't believe I don't know what I'm doing yet. Like, you are so young. You have so much time. You have plenty of time to figure it out. Like I didn't start what I'm doing until, it really was maybe like 34 until I like really got into it.
And I feel like there's also so many times, and that's why I always say to people, like, it doesn't matter the age, right? I mean, there was paths in my life, where I was in advertising. I lived in New York City. I love that. I met my husband and we decided to start a family. And so then I kind of took a step back because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a mom and I took a step back. And then as my kids got older and it was like, okay, I'm not needed as much. Now I need to figure something else out because I really don't want to go in and be the room mom again. And I'm not like this is what's funny about it. Like I do not bake. I do not really cook. And so I was always like the one that brought the store bought stuff. And the town that we lived in, everyone, the desserts they would bring were crazy. And I was like, yep, nope, this is me. It's from Whole Foods though. And
that's not for me.
And I'd bring it and I'd be totally fine with it. But I knew that I wanted something a little bit more. And that's kind of how my, life evolved. And then I'm curious about your thoughts here. I feel like when the universe or God, whoever you believe in or whatever you believe in, you all of a sudden are in the path that you're meant to be and the doors just start opening, right? And things just start happening in front of you. So I would love for you to touch a little bit on that, like how you believe in that. And then I want to go into the, when you were interviewing the rock bands.
Oh, that's a really good question. Because you're right. And I have this all the time. And it's true, no matter what field you're in, even if you're doing your dream job, there's always going to be moments that are not as wonderful. And a lot of times where you feel kind of down or dark and like, God, am I doing the right thing? And am I doing it the right way? And, is this really working or is this really going to happen? So I had that conversation with my husband a lot because, he's been in the entertainment industry and showbiz for 45 years now. And, so he has a lot of perspective. And there'll be times where, I've only been doing this several years and, I'm like, this didn't work out or this didn't work out. He's like, welcome to showbiz. That's what this is. You need to just, suck it up, move on, and keep your head high and don't get negative and just stay positive. So it's great to have him with that perspective, but it's true because there's so many times where you're like, oh man, like this didn't work out. And then you start to get negative. And then what I found recently that's kind of helped is that when that happens, to just take a step back. And because when you're an entrepreneur, as you know, you're always like pitching yourself, you're selling yourself. You don't always have a full team of people that's out there trying to do it for you. I mean, you're hustling and you're grinding and you're like, okay, I'm trying to make this happen. So when I found that things kind of can hit a wall sometimes, which they do. I mean, everything kind of ebbs and flows and comes in waves, that when you're at a point where things aren't going your way, instead of forcing it or being like, I'm going to work harder, which in my mentality, because I had a career in sales for, almost 2 decades and in real estate, when things are slow, I mean, you have to think of ways, okay, I'm going to work harder now. I'm going to put in more time and more hours and, sell. Right. But when it's a career like this, sometimes you just have to take a step back and be like, I'm just not going to do anything right now. Like, I'm not going to pitch myself. I'm not going to send any emails. I'm not going to try to make stuff happen. And maybe sometimes, like I had this happen recently for, things were just not going my way for, a couple months. I'm like, all right, I'm taking 1 whole month where I'm just not going to push and try to force things to happen. And then I took that time, and then sure enough, the universe kind of makes things kind of
flowing
in again. And then now I've been incredibly busy again, where I wasn't even trying to make that happen. It just kind of
happens.
And
so I love that you said that, because that's the thing. Sometimes it is like taking it. I always say, pause your body. And my kids and my husband they're like, oh my God, with pause your body. But and I am full on. I mean, it's hard for me to pause my body, but there's a lot of times when I do pause my body, even if it's in like that crazy moment where it's like, usually it's when I'm walking my dogs. It's usually I kind of pause and I get like thoughts. Oh, you know what? Right. I need to kind of think of this way, or I need just not to think at all. Right. Which I mean is very hard, but just maybe just like listen to some music and just sing and not think, okay, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next? And when you do that, again, the universe sometimes is like, you know what? Okay, you've kind of taken that step. Hey, I'm going to throw a little bread in front of you. And since you paused, you're going to see it, right? If you're going and not like stopping ever, sometimes you're missing things that you're really meant to see. So,
that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
So, okay. So when you were doing the interviews for the rock bands, how did you even go about that? Like, was that something you had a connection that helped you get in there? Or was it just, you were like, okay, I'm going to stand outside, like, Penny Lane?
Not quite. So because once again of my sales background, I never had any fear of talking to people or asking people. I mean, I have incredible comfort levels of going up to the biggest CEO in the world and being like, hey, like I have an idea, or I like, let's, will you listen to me on this? So, obviously this isn't that big of level, but, I was friends with the owner of this music venue in Chicago called Joe's Bar. And anyone if you know country music, you know Joe's Bar. I mean, they're the biggest country music venue in the country. And they have the biggest acts. I mean, it's a smaller music venue, but I mean, they'll have like Garth Brooks and Kenny Chesney. I mean, big people come through there. And I just pitched to the owner. I said, you guys have all these bands coming through and artists, and you don't have anyone that's interviewing them and like getting their story. And you have this really cool green room in back. Like, let's get a video team together and I'll interview the bands. And so that turned into, I mean, it wasn't like my biggest paying gig ever, but I was like, the fact that I was getting paid, even if it was like 5 cents to interview some of my favorite country artists and bands. I was like, I can't believe, like, this is really happening.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was like very exciting at the time. And, when I'd get a call and they're like, okay, Big and Rich is coming through this weekend, or whoever it was. And like, we want you to interview them. So then it turned into, when I started doing Eat Travel Rock TV, which is my own web series, then I was able to obviously not just do country artists, but, obviously it's Eat Travel Rock. I'm like, I really want to focus also more on rock. So then I was able to, once I kind of had that track record, I was able to have, my publicist or my agent like reach out to people and get these interviews.
I love that. And I should say not Penny Lane, because Penny Lane was sleeping with the band, so I did not mean it in that way. I guess I should say the guy that was doing the
No, I didn't even take offense, because I just love that movie so much. And
well, as I was saying it, I was like, wait,
you still love Penny Lane.
You do love Penny Lane, and so do I. 100% love Penny Lane. But as I said that, I was like, wait a second, right? No, that she was sleeping with the band, so I did not mean it that way. But I love that.
Probably the whole band,
right. I love though that so that's where you are a big thinker, right? You see the big picture. You're like, how can I do that? And again, that's probably, something that you were born with and that you learned from your family business. So, which is really cool. Then you took that and then made it into something bigger. So who was one of your favorites when you were doing that? Like, when you first started, who was, if you can think of like one of your favorite bands that you interviewed?
Oh gosh. Well, at the time when I was doing it for Joe's Bar, it was, once again, some of my favorites who I really loved interviewing might not be, let's say, the biggest names. But like one of my favorites way back in the day was Josh Kelly, who actually was a pop artist. He's married to Katherine Heigl, but he was a pop artist, but then he became a country artist. And he was one of my very first interviews. And he was just so lovely and so wonderful. Then I started interviewing some bigger bands like at Joe's Bar. But then on my own time, I started interviewing, it's so funny. It's like, then it's like when somebody asks what your favorite restaurant is, and then you draw a blank. It's like, now I'm like, you know, I've had so many that now I'm like, oh gosh, like Lee Bryce and Jared Neiman and, you know, just so many great big country artists. And then rock artists, it's so funny. Like, I don't have as many, let's say, rock artists on. I mean, I interviewed like Dee Snider from, you know, Twisted Sister, which was so funny. Like, he was just crazy. But now it's so funny that it's mainly country artists. So I'm like, if you're not in the country world, you might not know a lot of these people. But yeah, but now that in the last couple of years, I kind of took a break from doing more music stuff, because when you look on social media, it's food and travel is what plays more. Right. And so, you know, when I would post an interview with me interviewing like Borns recently or some other really cool rock artists, it just wasn't getting the traction that all of my food and travel stuff was getting. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll put that off to the side. But then now lately, people are so into like the fact that live music is coming back. So I'm trying to kind of beef up the music side.
I love that. Again. And James in the audience said that was a genius move, how you kind of talked about the green room, which is so true. Well, that's the thing. And that's, again, I love how you're in that space where you're doing a couple different things, because I, you know, became, when you got onto Fireside, but even before that, I would watch some of your stuff where you were doing, you know, the cocktails and some of your travel stuff. Like, I know you just were in Louisville, right? With your best friend.
In Louisville. Yeah. And that was seeing the Metallica concert and Jane's Addiction. And really, I'm like, all right, I am getting back into this full on.
I love it.
And I'm going to just blast out the Metallica content for like 10 days straight. And people are going to watch it, you know? So, and then it makes me happy then when I go back into the rock mode and then people really start responding to it. I'm like, good, the people are still there. The people that want to hear about music are still there.
Well, that's the thing. You have so many different niches, but you're so, and the thing that I actually, and again, what I was kind of drawn to you about is that you do all of them very seamlessly. Like, there's some people that can do one thing really, really well, but like you can see and feel like your excitement, right? You could see and feel that you were so excited to get back to that, the concerts, right? And then when you got home, you made Bob a really nice drink, which I like took screenshots of it, right? You made like some bourbon maple syrup drink or something.
Oh yeah, last night. Because well, Bob had been traveling for 2 weeks and I was traveling for 2 weeks, and so we didn't see each other. And when we went out to dinner last night, so before I'm like, let's have a little pre-dinner cocktail.
So nice.
So yeah, I made a little fall kind of take on an old fashioned. It was really, really delicious.
Well, look, because at first I was.
That is still on my Instagram.
Oh, good. Right. So when
it's on my Instagram stories.
Go watch it, because yes, it was good. It looked.
Yeah, but you know what? It's funny because a lot of people are, you know, they have either a food blog or show, or a travel blog or show, or a music blog or show, and I think sometimes people are like, oh, she just is naming the three things that everybody likes: food, travel, and music. And she's saying she's an expert in all of them. But you're right. It is bringing them all together in kind of a seamless way at the same time. And it's not as much about, you know, here I am like the expert, I'm going to tell you about this. It's more of me being genuinely and authentically excited about all this. And really, it's more just like about the attitude overall. Like sometimes, you know, if on my show, I'm just doing something that's food and travel related, but the rock is always still there in like spirit. You know, it's more of like the attitude and the vibe of, you know, it's like a rock and roll vibe kind of is always there throughout, whether it's, you know, just the music I choose for the background music or whatever it is. It's always just there.
And that's the thing. And when you said that, you really do. And I'm not just saying that because you're on the show right now, but you really do it authentically. Like you could see how excited you are and like, and how much you love to share it, right? Like you also love to share it with your audience. Like, hey, I just found this, or, oh, I'm making this cocktail, or I made this smoothie and I just want to share it with you guys because I really like it. And it's not like to be like, right, you're the expert of it, even though you've gotten into this niche that you're really good at. So I think that's
oh, thank you, Julia.
no, but I really think it's something beautiful because, you know, through social media, and as you said, like with the whole influencers and all of that, you can tell. I mean, I know I've been in this space now for a while. Like I can tell the ones that truly love what they're doing or the ones that are trying to really you know, just do it for the views or the likes or whatever. Like you could tell you're getting those because you really like what you're doing. And so people are like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. And again, you're going to have the people in all three of those categories that are going to, you know, jump to one thing and be like, oh, I love it. But then they're going to share with their friends who maybe love the travel part more, and especially now that travel and, you know, the rock that you can get into it. So I think it's like brilliant how you really have tied all three together. So what, you're welcome. No, really. So where's your next trip? Like, what are you doing next? What's on the agenda?
Well, I go to Tempe, Arizona this weekend. Because a lot of the work that I do is with tourism boards, and I always try to choose places that either I know and love and I can kind of share with people my take on it, or a place that I've never been before that I've been looking forward to going to. So I've been to, my sister went to ASU, and I've been to Tempe a million times. We used to have a house in Scottsdale, so I know the area really well, but Tempe recently has really exploded in terms of not just being a college town. You know, they have like some really nice new hotels and a lot of really cool outdoor activities. So I'm going with a friend of mine, and we're going to, you know, go on Tempe Town Lakes and do this crazy like e-bike tour and lots of hiking. And then I guess they have a lot of really cool new like nightlife and cocktail bars and restaurants, and the new hotel that they have there is really cool. So we're going to do Tempe. And then the week after that, I go to Tulsa, because I've never been to Oklahoma, and there's Tulsa, I guess, has this really cool emerging food scene too. So I'm going to check out Tulsa, and yeah, so those are the next two upcoming trips in October.
Oh, that's so fun though. So I love what you said there, that like you'll go to a place that you really like and you want to share, but then a place that you've never gone. So you can kind of get the view, like as a you know, someone like me or someone watching or listening, you can kind of see like, oh, okay, now I can see that Kelly has been there and this is what she loves about it. And then watching you, it's almost like, I mean, I know this sounds like so corny, but we went one summer to Europe, and like watching my kids, just their eyes like be like, wow, you said this was going to be amazing here in Italy, but I didn't know it was going to be this amazing. So it's kind of cool for us on the other side to see you experience the things that you've heard of and that you've researched, because you obviously have, you know, do the research. So you're going to find the really good spots, which is exciting. So it's like kind of fun to be on the other side to like watch that kind of unfold.
Yeah, especially for like, for instance, for Tulsa, a lot of times that might not be somebody's main destination, but maybe if they're on a road trip and they're driving through, at least this way, now I'm like, okay, here's some cool restaurants, you know, that maybe weren't on like diners, drive-ins and dives or whatever. Like here's like some cool new, like a cool cocktail bar in Tulsa where if you're driving through, you can hit up something that's not like a chain restaurant or something like that. So that's my goal for some of these cities that might be a little off the beaten path. But also, I know this sounds a little corny, but one of my main goals in life is to go to all 50 states.
Oh, I love that.
And Oklahoma's like one that I haven't been to yet. So I'm like, I'm like checking it off, because now I'm at like 42 out of 50 states. So I'm like, all right, I'm getting there.
That's so fun. Okay. So Jen in the audience said, go to Buffalo, her hometown. And then James said, we both should go to Scotland for some haggis. I think I said that right.
Oh my gosh. So Scotland is probably one of my favorite places I've been. Bob and I went 2 years ago now.
I love that one.
And wow. And Edinburgh is probably one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. And I've been dying to go back. And since I went last time, I've now become like this huge Outlander fan. And now I'm just like, I need to go back to Scotland. And I do have a potential trip in the works right now. And I'm really excited. I'm like, fingers crossed that it comes through, because if it does, there will be some Scotland travel guides coming up. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. All right. So I know we're going to be cutting this short, but I have like two more things that kind of come to mind when I'm thinking. So of course it's going to be, and I know cocktails, you make so many different ones, but what is your go-to cocktail? And I know I'm sure so many people ask you that, but like, you know, if you're like, this is what I need today.
I love it. My go-to, so there's two pretty much. mainly it's a Negroni. I just love the bitterness. I love Campari. And when a bartender makes it perfectly balanced, it's like the perfect cocktail. But then when I'm with Bob, if we go to a place that's more of, like a high-end restaurant that's kind of like a steakhousey kind of vibe, something like that, his drink is always, oh my gosh, it takes 10 minutes for him to explain it to the bartender, and he calls it the Jewish James Bond, because he's like, so it's a vodka martini, bruised, very, very cold, blue cheese olive, slightly dirty, no vermouth. And then he's like, dead penguins floating, Kate Winslet on a door. I mean, he goes like through this whole thing of like how cold it has to be.
Right.
And then I just say,
I'll have that.
2. I'll do that too. Like,
perfect.
I'm not going to repeat it. Just I'll do 2. So sometimes if he does the whole song and dance, I'll be like, okay, I'll do that also. But usually it's a Negroni.
Got it.
Like if I'm at a cocktail lounge or something like that.
Okay. So also like red or white, if you had to pick one, wine.
So as much as I know about food, I know just as little about wine. And I probably would go white because red can give me a headache. Like I can have one glass and immediately have a headache. And I just don't have the developed palate for red wine as much. And where like white wine, I could be like, oh, this is a Sauvignon Blanc, or this is a Chardonnay, or this is a red wine. Like it all kind of tastes the same to me. Please don't hate me, people. I know it's embarrassing, but I can't tell. And Bob will be like, oh, this wine is just so, taste.
And he does the legs.
This is like a expensive bottle. And I'm like, it tastes the same to me as the other one. Like I'm a cheap date when it comes to that. Cause like, don't waste your money on me with a nice red wine. But
isn't that interesting? But that's where I think it's so fascinating to people's palates, right? Like someone has something that tastes a little spicier to them, and then someone else will taste it and will have a completely different flavor. And that's why I love food, because I think it's really cool to kind of like, also being a mom and watching my kids, like when we went through Italy, like one's picking out certain things that they love. Like my one son could tell if it had a different olive oil. And I thought that when he was little, and I was like, that's so cool. He'd be like, oh, that has a different olive oil than the other one. And so we would always ask, and it was like,
that's really
so good, right? And so I think that's like really cool. But again, there's like nothing wrong with that, because so your palate for red wine is not as, I mean, people would say sophisticated, but I don't think that's the word. But
exactly. I mean, I was just in Louisville and did a bourbon tasting, and she's like, this one is a little bit more, and I'm like, yeah, right, like, but where tequila, I can spot the difference in tequilas all day long. And I could be like, no, that is, that's a more fine tequila than this one. And this is a platinum. And this, I mean, tequilas are different for me, but bourbon, I'm like, kind of just tastes like fire.
Right. I know. And it smells like fire. Okay. So want to kind of end with, what is your favorite fall dish that you've come across? Like, again, a go-to, like you're like, okay, I'm going to cook tonight. I'm going to throw something together. What is your favorite?
Oh gosh, that's interesting. It's, I know it's a little cliche or a little basic or like played out now, but anything with, like I have my little pumpkin set up in there and my little flowers, fall flowers, because anything kind of like pumpkin-y and squash, in the fall, that sage and like a pumpkin butter and all that, like a pasta with like ravioli, pumpkin ravioli, basically anything from Trader Joe's that is like pumpkin oriented. You just have to go through it, and then you get burnt out on it. You do it for a couple weeks and you overload on the pumpkin stuff, and then you're like, all right, I did it. Now I can move on to the cranberry flavored stuff.
Right. But it does.
It is fun though to do the pumpkin thing when it first comes out, and basically fall, when things start to get cooler, soups and pastas. I
love soup.
And as an Italian, I also have to have pasta for every meal, and it's very cozy and comforting for me. So, I like it all year long, but definitely in the fall.
Right. And it is, there's something about it when the summer kind of comes to an end. It really is. You're like, oh, squash. Like, I mean, it's something, whether it's media or just the way like the air feels, but it does. It kind of feels really nice. I know we're
but it's not cold.
I know. I was going to say here in LA.
So it's hot here in LA. I was just in Chicago all week and I brought all my fall clothes and it was 85 degrees every day. I'm like, and then I come here and it's still hot. I'm like,
see, I'm in New York and it's getting cooler. I know it's getting cooler, but I have to say, as I've gotten older, there's been like 3 days where going to the, early morning, the kids have to be at school by like 7:20. And my oldest now is,
God bless you.
It's early, but I get up early, so it's fine. But my oldest has his permit, so he drives to school in the morning. And the other morning I think it was like in the 50s, and we're like by the beach. So it is like, we're out in West Hampton area. So it is cooler where we are than, you go 15 minutes west, and it is a little warmer. So I have to say that. Yes, it's actually crazy. Totally different weather, literally 15 minutes.
So cool, though.
It is. But sometimes you'll be coming in and like, oh my God, it's pouring. And then you get here and we're like, oh my God, over West Hampton, it's sunny. And
well, it's like here with the valley.
Yes.
I mean, it can be 80 in, in Brentwood or in LA, and then it's 95 in the valley, just
right over the hill. Right. So it's kind of crazy. But so that's it. We literally walked outside and my son was like, I gotta go get a sweatshirt. He's like, it's cold. And I was like, it is cold. And as I've gotten older, I get like a little bit colder. But isn't that when people then move to Florida or they move to like the warmer weather? I kind of get it.
And then it's the exact opposite.
Right. Totally. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for jumping on. I really, really appreciate this. And I'm so excited that I was able to kind of give everyone that is new to Fireside, whether they're, broadcasting live was a little weird today because of the fact that some of the platforms are down, but I will be posting this on other places and some people will be able to hear the replay. But it's just fun for them to get kind of insight of how you started, because everyone starts in a certain place and everyone has a story. And it's fun to hear, oh, that person was like me. I was in my family business. You know what? I'm feeling like I kind of want to change thing up. And then they hear a story like this and they're like, you know what? I'm going to do it. So thank you for, jumping on and being with us here at YNSLive.
Thank you for having me, Juliet. This was such a pleasure. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening. Yeah. So this was so much fun.
And I love all the new sound effects. I feel like they've gotten better and better, right?
I know. I'm like, this is so exciting. The sound effects are so much fun. And yeah, there's some new ones.
I know. What is that? I know. Like at one point I actually got a little startled. James did I think that's the party hat. And I was like, I jumped. There it is. I love it. Thanks, Lily. So thank you, Lily, Stephanie, James. I know Colleen, Gabrielle, Hi, Jessica, Sharon, and the Waitbot, Jimmy, and us. So thank you guys again. I'm going to bring the Waitbot up for a little music, and we'll see you next time on YNSLive. Thanks, Cal.
I hope you liked this episode of Your Next Stop. Please subscribe to my channel, share with your friends, and join in each week.